They say power reveals true character in Riverbend Estates, a quiet neighborhood tucked behind oak-lined streets. One man's thirst for control turned peaceful homes into battlegrounds. I wasn't looking for a fight. I came here for fresh air, a garden, and a place to breathe after years in the courtroom. But when a petty tyrant disguised as an HOA president decided to make me his latest target, he didn't realize the one neighbor he picked on wasn't just another homeowner. I was a man who had made a career of exposing corruption, and I wasn't about to let Riverbend fall to fear. This is the story of how one flowerbed started a revolution and how a neighborhood took back its freedom. The late afternoon sun slanted across Riverbend Estates, casting a warm glow over manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. Ethan Cole leaned against the wooden railing of his porch, the faint scent of honeysuckle brushing past. In his hand, a crisp envelope trembled slightly. Not from the wind, but from something colder, sinking into his gut. A $1,000 fine for installing a flower bed around the memorial bench he had built for his late wife, Anna. He read it again, slow and deliberate. The language was clear, almost gleeful. Unauthorized landscaping modification. Immediate compliance required. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had read every page of the HOA's bylaws when he moved in 2 months ago. Nowhere did it mention needing approval for a simple flower bed. This wasn't about landscaping. It was about control. Across the street, Richard Langley strutted along the sidewalk like a small-town sheriff clipboard, tucked under his arm, barking at a teenage boy whose basketball hoop leaned too far into the street. The HOA president in all his petty glory, Ethan recognized the type, instantly men, who craved authority without understanding responsibility. Ethan inhaled slowly, the evening air sharp in his chest. He hadn't come here to start battles. After decades on the federal bench, he was tired. He wanted quiet mornings and quiet evenings, a place to remember Anna, without the noise of politics, or the grind of the city. Riverbend Estates, with its sleepy streets and picket fences, had seemed like the perfect sanctuary. Apparently, he'd misjudged, straightening his shoulders. Ethan folded the fine and slid it into his pocket. His body moved with the same practiced calm that once commanded courtrooms packed with high-powered attorneys. He crossed the street. "Excuse me," he called out. Richard turned the corners of his mouth, already curling into a dismissive smirk. "Afternoon, Mr. Cole. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Ethan held up the citation. "Mind explaining what this is about?" Richard barely glanced at the paper. Page 12, Section 4. Landscaping modifications require HOA approval. Ethan raised a brow. "That section covers fences, decks, pools, not flower beds." Richard's smirk widened. "Interpretation's flexible. We have to maintain community standards. And the community decided my roses are a threat. Rules are rules." Richard said, a shrug in his voice. "You can appeal, but between us." He leaned in conspiratorially. "The HOA doesn't lose appeals." There it was, the arrogance. The assumption that no one would fight back. Ethan smiled, slow and easy. The kind of smile that once made even the cockiest defense attorneys reconsider their strategies. "Is that so?" he said. Richard laughed, like he'd already won. "Sure is no offense, Mr. Cole, but you might want to get used to how we do things around here." Ethan nodded, offering no hint of the fire stirring beneath his cool exterior. "Good to know." As he turned back toward his house, Ethan caught a glimpse of his reflection in a car window. An older man, yes, but still standing straight. Still capable of a fight when necessary. He wasn't the sort to be pushed around, not by petty tyrants, not by anyone. Inside, Ethan placed the fine carefully on the kitchen counter and poured himself a bourbon. His hand hovered over the glass for a moment before he picked it up, feeling the weight of everything it symbolized. Anna's memory, his dignity, the principle that no one, not even the smallest man with the biggest clipboard, was above fairness. He took a slow sip, his mind already moving, calculating the next steps with the precision of a chess grandmaster, setting a trap 3 moves ahead. The HOA didn't lose. They were about to, And Richard Langley just had no idea who he'd picked a fight with. The next morning, Ethan woke early, coffee steaming in one hand, HOA rulebook in the other. He moved methodically, cross-referencing, highlighting, and taking notes like a trial attorney, preparing closing arguments. Years of judging high-profile cases had taught him one unbreakable rule: power crumbles under scrutiny. By 10 a.m., he had a thick folder of inconsistencies. The first move was simple documentation. Armed with a camera and a notepad, Ethan strolled through Riverbend Estates. The signs of selective enforcement were everywhere. Richard's own home was a mess: hedges overgrown by 3 feet, an unauthorized gazebo, and the backyard trash cans visible from the street. Violations that would have earned anyone else a hefty fine. But somehow, Richard's property had escaped scrutiny. Neighbors watched Ethan with cautious curiosity as he snapped photos, logged addresses, and recorded dates. Some waved, hesitantly. Others crossed the street to avoid him. Fear lingered in the air like a fog. After lunch, Ethan stopped by a few homes where he'd heard whispers of unfair treatment. A young couple, the Millers, answered their door nervously. "We got fined $2,000 last year for a garden shed," Mr. Miller said. "But when we tried to appeal, they threatened foreclosure." "And now we stay quiet," his wife added, clutching the doorframe like a lifeline. Ethan nodded slowly. "Would you be willing to make a statement if it came to it?" The Millers hesitated, then nodded. Fear tempered by the glimmer of hope, word spread fast. That evening, Ethan's porch light flickered with visitors. A widow fined for a ramp her disabled son needed. A retired veteran cited for flying a slightly oversized flag. A single mother who had paid hundreds for noise complaints that mysteriously disappeared when her neighbor's teenage band played every weekend, story after story, each one more damning than the last. Richard Langley wasn't just power-hungry. He was running the HOA like his personal kingdom, weaponizing fines, threatening livelihoods, and enriching himself in the process. By the end of the week, Ethan had gathered more than 24 affidavits, photo evidence, and a thick binder of documented violations, both committed and covered up. But he needed more. He needed the financials, and that's when fate, or perhaps karma, delivered. Late Friday afternoon, an envelope slid under Ethan's door. No return address, no note, just a thick stack of documents: HOA, budgets, bank records, transaction logs. The good stuff. He thumbed through them, his heart speeding up. There it was, black and white, evidence of embezzlement. Tens of thousands in community fines funneled into personal accounts hidden under miscellaneous maintenance and community beautification labels. Ethan sat back, the pieces clicking into place. Richard wasn't just crooked, he was criminal. The decision was made. This wasn't just about clearing his name or defending his roses anymore. This was about justice. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used since retirement. The line clicked, and a familiar voice answered. U.S. District Attorney's Office, Special Investigations. "This is Catherine Wells." Ethan smiled grimly. "Catherine, it's Ethan Cole. I think I have a case you'll want to hear about." The following Saturday, Riverbend Estates was buzzing. Word had spread like wildfire. There was going to be an emergency HOA meeting. Unofficially, everyone knew it wasn't about reviewing landscaping guidelines or approving new mailboxes. It was about Richard Langley. Ethan arrived early, carrying nothing but a slim leather folder. He didn't need theatrics. The truth was heavy enough. The community center was packed, neighbors standing along walls murmuring anxiously. Richard sat at the front, flanked by the board members, who still clung to him, sweating bullets. His usual smirk was plastered on his face, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted toward Ethan, calculating, desperate. Richard banged his gavel like a war drum. "Let's keep it orderly," he barked, ignoring the cold glares from the crowd. "First, the matter of unauthorized complaints, filed by a certain resident." Ethan rose smoothly, cutting him off. "Actually, Mr. Langley," he said, his voice carrying calm authority. "I think we should start with these." He opened his folder, holding up a series of documents. Photocopies of the HOA's own financial records, annotated with highlighted discrepancies. Whispers turned to gasps. "This," Ethan said, tapping the papers lightly, "is evidence of misappropriated funds, tens of thousands of dollars collected through false citations. And here," he held up a photo, "is proof of property vandalism committed by none other than you, Mr. Langley." Richard's face drained of color. "You have no right," Richard blustered. "I have every right," Ethan countered calmly, "and so do these homeowners." One by one, people began standing: the Millers, the widow with the disabled son, the veteran. A sea of faces, once isolated and scared, now unified. "We want answers," someone shouted. "You took our money," another cried. "You're a liar, Richard." Came from the back. Richard pounded the gavel again, his voice cracking. "This meeting is adjourned." But no one moved. Instead, two uniformed officers entered the building, cutting through the crowd with grim expressions. They approached Richard. "Richard Langley," the taller officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, vandalism, and abuse of authority." The room exploded into shocked gasps and murmurs as the officers read Richard his rights. Ethan stayed perfectly still, watching the inevitable unfold. Richard thrashed once, protesting his innocence. But it was useless. His allies on the board shrank back, distancing themselves immediately. The HOA president. Once the neighborhood tyrant was led out in handcuffs, silence fell. Then a slow clap broke out. From Mrs. Harris, the 80-year-old widow, who had once been too afraid to even step outside. Others joined, and suddenly the room roared with applause. Ethan smiled quietly. Not for the fall of Richard Langley, but for the rise of the community.